All right, so as I mentioned yesterday, there's a second law that we're going to use called the law of cosines. And we will use that for one particular scenario, and that is when we don't have the relationship of the angle and the side opposite it. Okay, there are two different cases when that happens. Here's one. Okay, so notice, if we were going to use law of sines for this, we would need to know the length of A so that we can get that relationship. But since we don't, we can't solve that. Which means we have to switch to law of cosines. Law of cosines is a harder law to use. And so our goal here, and one thing you want to remember is, in any given problem, you only want to do the law of cosines once, because it's a nasty calculation. Then you can switch back to law of sines to solve the rest of the problem. Okay? So we would, in this case, we'd use law of cosines to solve for A, and then we would switch to law of sines because then we would have that angle and the side opposite. Question?
How do you know which side to use?
We'll get there. Okay? There's the law of cosines. A, B, C are three sides of the triangle. You'll have to adapt that formula based on what you're looking for. Maybe the triangle isn't labeled as triangle ABC. Maybe it's labeled as triangle XYZ. Maybe it's labeled as triangle DOG. So there's a couple things to notice here and a couple things you want to make note of. By the way, you'll notice a different format here. Yesterday you derived the law of sines because that's an easier thing to work with. The derivation of the law of cosines is really nasty, so we're just going right to the formula. Okay, so a couple things to notice. Little a is on the left. Okay, it's on the left side of the equal sign by itself. The angle A is the angle that you're going to use for the cosine. So, for instance, if I have the triangle XYZ and X is over here on the left, that means that this has to be angle X. So those two always correspond to each other. And you'll notice that these two are the two in there. Okay? So it doesn't matter what the triangle is. You just have to make sure you have that correct correspondence. Side on the left, angle for the cosine. Two scenarios just like yesterday. Solving for a side or solving for an angle. Okay, so let's go back to this guy. This is the side angle side scenario, because I know two sides and I know the angle in between. And I'm going to start by solving for A. Okay? Or you're going to start by solving angle for side A, sorry. So set up your equation. You've got the law of cosines, set it up. If you're feeling saucy, try and solve for A. If you're struggling, ask your partners or raise your hand and I'll come over and help you. The important part here, well, there's two parts. One is being able to set it up correctly. Two is being able to solve it. And you will need your calculators, by the way. This first case is nice because you can type the whole thing into your calculator in one shot.
But can we program it in?
I'm sorry?
Can we program it into our calculator?
Sure. Fine with me.
Oh. I'm just making sure because I don't want to get in trouble for using something like that because it would be considered cheating. So that's why I asked if we can do it. I am not an idiot. Well, I am. Where?
Yeah, I got 30.52.
You got 30. Oh wait,
You guys square it.
yeah. Okay, I got 5.5.
Hate writing with my hand. This feels so
Yeah.
I just have to.
Wiggle line.
Now's not the time to write the program. Something wrong there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you approximated that value. Type that whole thing as one big calculation. You should get 5.5. So you're close. That's right.
What do we got, kids? Good, I like it. Good.
And then can't we do like that negative cosine thing and find the rest of it?
Save yourself a hassle. Just type that whole thing. Four squared plus 7 squared minus 7 times cosine of x.
All right, we good?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5.52?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in my calculation here, so there's the setup that I saw all of you do correctly. Then I did a bunch of work to get to the answer. However, with your calculator, you can type that whole equation on the right side in as one value. But you get, I skipped a step in there, you get 30 point something or another, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that 30 point something other equals what? A squared. So you have to remember to take the square root of that. That's the single most common mistake that people make with law of cosines. Now, how do I know? Let's suppose I think the answer is 30 point whatever that turns out to be. Why can't A be 30? Something or another? This will be a nice checks and balances once you remember this thing we've talked about in the past. Eddie?
It's because two sides added up can't be less than third side.
Perfect. Okay, remember we did that, it's called the triangle inequality. We talked about that thing that the two smallest sides have to always add up to be bigger than the third side. So that tells us, just looking at the problem without even doing law of cosines, we know that A has to be what? Other than 5.52, because you already did the work. Less than 11. 7 plus 4. Yeah. Okay, so 5.5. Any problems? Good. That's the easier one. It's easier to set up, it's easier to solve. The nastier one comes about in the next scenario, which is called the side scenario. What if you just know 3 sides of a triangle? Now, this is where things get a little wishy-washy. We don't really talk about it in this class, but there is a weird situation that comes up with the law of sines, which is called the ambiguous case for the law of sines. We're going to avoid that scenario, and I'm going to let your pre-calc teacher deal with it. So, in order to avoid that scenario, or that problem that comes about, we need to remember this. Solve for the largest angle first, always, in the side scenario. So the question is, Luca, which one's the biggest angle? D, O, or G? Anybody? Evan?
It's O because the biggest side always is the opposite of the biggest angle.
Oh
Beautiful.
yeah.
Remember we talked about small, medium, large theorem yesterday? Biggest angle opposite the biggest side. Okay, so let's try this in stages. Set up the law of cosines to solve for angle O. So if we're solving for angle O, which side should be on the left side of the equation? Which value? 19.7, 12.1, or 8.8? 19.7. Okay, set it up, and then try to solve it.
cards.
What?
Minus. We'll only allow them two. I put a second as well. Cosine. I'm gonna think it's zero. I don't know if it's O or not.
Good, got it set up correctly.
Here, let me get a perfect square.
Cosine of what?
No, I think that's.
If you've got, whoops. If you've got 19.7 over there, which angle goes there? Hmm?
19, oh,
No, stop.
Try solving.
You ever heard that song by that guy?
If you think you have it set up correctly, go ahead and try and solve it. See if you get a reasonable answer.
Cosine. So.
The kids version, they said, Norma, come put some water.
I'll try solving.
I cat got it. And the thing when I do cat.
And what point do we need to learn this in life?
It doesn't make sense. They just look at the numbers and be like,
Yeah, let's call it sine.
I would just make up a weird theory.
Probably higher than
Huh? I mean, math does fit in with science, but you really need algebra 1
What? That's so weird. So in this case, I do have.
Okay, now I'm stuck. Why do you chew like that? Just wondering.
Now what?
And then you divide it.
Do it to minus. I got yourself corrected. It's pretty little.
Okay. Almost there.
I feel like I'm doing
Same.
Evan is right. I think I'm good so far. So far, I'd be happy. No, it's clap.
What I try to do was get cosine of 0. Oh, I
This is
like
actually
some.
really
And I got 0.77 is equal to cosine of
Because
0.
that can now be the biggest thing.
Yeah, you do be clapping. You do be hacking and clapping.
I got it.
Actually?
I got it.
I don't think I did this one.
Let's just get rid of the
Take the
minus.
minus sign.
I think they're right.
Got it?
Yes.
What do you got?
Cosine -1. Cosine -1.
Where did the 851 come from?
Bro.
I don't know if I got it or not.
It's not 19.
Wait, what'd you do with the negative? Yeah.
What error?
When I
What do you
did
mean
that,
error?
cosine negative 1 negative 3.7.
I don't know where the 851, your method is perfect
Like that?
for some reason that bizarre answer came up there, unless you use the squared values, but notice.
Are you in the green?
So if you go back to this step, take 164.
Are you in the
And then finish that process, you should be good to go.
Wait, why is my cosine negative 1?
Wait, try to do that. Try to do that.
We'll have to talk about that in a second, because we're gonna address some common issues. Okay, let's,
It wasn't working on the homework either.
Is it 140?
What did you do?
Never
No,
works.
we're just going with it.
Taylor, what'd you get?
140. Taylor, that's what I got.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
okay, let's talk about the process more so than setting it up, because I think that almost all of you set it up correctly, but you struggled with the algebra. So, there's the setup. Everybody good to go? Notice that the 19.7 is squared, the first 12.1 and the first 8.8 are squared. First common mistake that people make in solving a law of cosines is they forget that minus sign. Second thing is you forget the parentheses. The parentheses are very important, because what people tend to do is they do 12.1 squared plus 8.8 squared minus, and then they'll subtract those numbers after that, leaving the cosine. The parentheses are there for a reason. Okay. So I'm guessing most of you scored 19.7, 12.1, 8.8, and I made a big jump there. So let's talk about the steps to get to that. What's 19.7 squared? Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on a second. That's what I want. 388.09. And of course, you would store that in your calculator. What is this stuff once you square it and add it together? 223.85. Minus parentheses. What is this stuff when you multiply it out? 212.96 cosine of O. Okay, so I get to that point. And here's what causes problems. What a lot of people will do now is they will take 223.85 and subtract 212.96. That's bad. Why is that bad? Well, look at this. If I gave you 7 minus 5x, is that equal to 2x?
No.
Absolutely not. That's horrible math. Don't do it here either.
We have to divide.
No. What do I do next? Rachel.
Subtract 223.85 to 388.19.
I like it. What does that give me on the left?
164.24.
And then this side becomes negative 212.96. Whoops. Cosine. 96 cosine of O. Okay, what's the next step? Go.
Divide by a negative 212.96 on both sides.
Excellent. And when you do that, you should get to the number that I have here, which is, hold on a second, let me get this mess out of the way. Negative 0.7712.
Yay!
How did he okay?
That's not the value of O. That's the cosine of O. And some of you said, Jack, I think you were the one that you kept getting an error on your calculator.
Yeah.
That will also act as a nice checks and balances. You can only do the inverse cosine of a number between negative 1 and 1. If you have the cosine of an angle equaling something bigger than that, we got a problem. You did something wrong, so you got to go back and figure that out. Then how do I figure out what O is?
No, that's it.
Inverse cosine and get 140.5. Nice job.
How do you, I can't put negative numbers in my phone. How's it 0.5?
Yeah.
0.46 because you didn't.
Oh, you rounded up.
7, not 0.77.
I forgot to do the inverse.
Oh my goodness.
Do you just do this?
Yep. Shit.
Okay, we good? Now,
Okay,
if we
so
want to
negative
continue and solve this triangle, which we're going to do, I'm still missing 2 angle measures. I know how big angle O is. I need to find angle D and angle G, and we're going to work as efficiently as possible. You've seen how ugly the law of cosines is. I don't want to do that again. So I can cheat and do the law of, that's not cheating, but I'm going to switch to the law of sines,
Why are you getting close?
which will make my life a lot easier. The question is, which angle do I solve for next? D or G? D. Why? It does matter. We're gonna make it matter. We did the largest angle first. Do the next largest angle next. So go in descending order. Therefore, we're gonna solve for G. Now, once we found angle O, by the way, you should store that value. Don't use 140.5 in your calculations. Use the stored value. We can set up the law of sines because now we know an angle and the side opposite is. So we get
Why are you so
that.
close?
Yeah.
And that's what we did yesterday. The sine of an angle over the side opposite is equal to the sine of an angle over the side opposite it. And I got G to be about 23 degrees. Where's all my work for D? How did I find angle D?
You set the other two equal to 180.
I know what you meant, so we'll go with yes. Yeah, take 180, subtract the other two.
Yeah.
Good. And now we have all three sides and all three angles.
Yeah.
Okay? Other problems that come about that I see commonly is people using the wrong trig function. If you're doing law of sines, you're going to use sine. When you're doing law of cosines, you're going to use cosine. It's pretty straightforward there. For the most part, tonight's homework is going to be pretty straightforward. You're going to be doing law of cosines. As they start to get combined between you having to decide, do I use law of sines, do I use law of cosines, it's going to get a little bit trickier, but doable. Question? Which angle? Oh, okay, good.
What were you
So Brenna just
doing?
asked a good question. How do you decide which one to use? The first thing that I would do in any scenario is look and see, do I know a side and the angle opposite? Because I want to use law of sines before I use law of cosines. So in this case, go all the way back to the beginning.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I look at that and I say, okay, I've got an angle measure, I've got one angle measure, but I don't know the side opposite it. Therefore, I can't do law of sines. Or, like yesterday's problem, we didn't have the angle and the side opposite it, but I can easily find that third angle because I gave you two of the angles. Okay. Law of cosines is going to come about when we don't have that relationship, when you don't have the angle and the side opposite. So what that would do. How many of those can you name? You know, we know their sources, swords and guns. Do you know where they're from?
Oh my
Infinity
god.
War.
The Halo battle rifle.
Wait, I know that gun.
Okay, wait, hold on.
That's the
hold on,
golden
hold on.
gun.
I'll leave it up there for you to look at. Here's what we're going to do for the
Oh
rest
my
of the
gosh, I know
period.
most of these.
You are going to take a look at your day 10 homework. If you think you've got it under control and you and your group all agree, you're good to go. Submit that and move on to day 11. If you're struggling with day 10, either work with your group or we will be circulating around and helping you with anything that you may have had problems with. Are we good? All right, go.
You got the gravity gun.
Portal gun.
That looks good.
Hold on, I'll put it back.